What I'm about to reveal will completely shatter everything astronomers thought they knew about our solar system and what's lurking in the cosmic darkness beyond. While the world has been distracted by earthly concerns, something extraordinary has been racing toward us at 130,000 miles per hour, and the data that just came back from Mars has left scientists scrambling to rewrite the textbooks. This isn't your typical space rock drifting through the void. This is 3I Atlas, the third confirmed interstellar visitor to penetrate our solar system, and the observations we've captured over the past 72 hours have revealed something so unprecedented that it's forcing us to confront possibilities we never dared consider. The numbers don't lie, but they're telling us a story that challenges everything we understand about comets, mass, and the very nature of objects that travel between the stars. Here's what they're not telling you in the mainstream coverage. The Mars flyby data isn't just interesting, it's revolutionary. When multiple spacecraft positioned around the red planet turned their instruments toward this mysterious visitor, they documented behavior that defies conventional physics. We're talking about an object that weighs at least 33 billion tons, yet somehow resists forces that should be pushing it off course. An interstellar wanderer with a chemical composition so bizarre that it's rewriting our understanding of planetary formation in distant star systems. But that's just the surface level. The trajectory analysis reveals something even more disturbing. This object didn't stumble into our solar system by accident. It approached from the direction of Sagittarius, threading the cosmic needle with precision that makes our most sophisticated spacecraft look primitive by comparison. The statistical probability of its planetary encounters occurring by random chance, less than 1 in 20,000. Before we dive into this cosmic mystery together, hit that like button and subscribe, because what we're uncovering here is the kind of story that only comes along once in a generation. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, what time it is there, and whether you think we're alone in the universe, because after today, you might change your mind. The story begins on July 1st, 2025, when the Atlas Survey telescope in Chile detected a faint smudge of light against the stellar background. At first glance, it looked like just another asteroid or comet, the kind of routine discovery that happens dozens of times each year. But as astronomers began plotting its trajectory, something extraordinary emerged from the data. This object wasn't following a closed orbit around our sun like every other piece of debris in our cosmic neighborhood. It was moving too fast, following a hyperbolic path that could only mean one thing: it came from somewhere else entirely. The designation 3I Atlas tells the whole story in just 2 characters. The I stands for interstellar, marking it as only the third confirmed visitor from beyond our solar system. The first, Oumuamua, sparked worldwide fascination when it was discovered in 2017, followed by 2I Borisov in 2019. But 3I Atlas is different. It's not just another curiosity passing through our cosmic backyard. It's a game changer that's forcing scientists to confront the limits of their understanding. When researchers first calculated the object's size based on its brightness, they arrived at estimates that should have been impossible. We're talking about something potentially 3.5 miles across, though it could be as small as 1,444 feet. That might not sound massive until you consider what it means for an interstellar object. According to the statistical models that govern cosmic debris, finding something this large this early in our search should happen about once every 10,000 years. Yet here we are, barely a decade into systematic interstellar object detection, and we've stumbled across what might be the most significant discovery in the history of astronomy. But size is just the beginning of the Atlas enigma. Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb, whose reputation for pushing the boundaries of conventional thinking has made him both celebrated and controversial, ran the numbers and arrived at a conclusion that sent shockwaves through the astronomical community. Based on the limited reservoir of heavy elements scattered throughout interstellar space, we should have discovered around 100,000 objects the size of Oumuamua before ever encountering something as massive as 3I Atlas. Instead, we've found exactly 2 smaller visitors and now this cosmic giant. The implications are staggering. Either our understanding of interstellar object populations is fundamentally flawed, or we're dealing with something that doesn't fit the natural distribution patterns that govern space debris. Loeb doesn't mince words when describing the situation. 3I Atlas is more massive than the other 2 interstellar objects by 3 to 5 orders of magnitude, constituting a major anomaly. This is where the story takes a turn that makes even seasoned astronomers uncomfortable. When you crunch the numbers on 3I Atlas's behavior, accounting for the forces that should be acting on it as it travels through space, you arrive at a mass estimate that borders on the impossible. We're talking about 33 billion tons compressed into an object just a few miles across. To put that in perspective, it's like taking a small mountain and squeezing it into the space occupied by a city. The density calculations are what keep researchers awake at night. We're looking at material compressed to levels that approach neutron star matter, substances so dense that a teaspoon would weigh as much as Mount Everest. But neutron star material can't exist in the temperature and pressure conditions of interplanetary space. It would expand explosively, creating a cosmic fireworks display visible across the solar system. Yet 3I Atlas maintains its impossible density while cruising through the void at speeds that would vaporize any conventional spacecraft. The trajectory analysis reveals another layer of the mystery that has profound implications for how we understand interstellar visitors. Unlike typical space debris that enters our solar system from random directions, 3I Atlas approached from Sagittarius, directly toward the galactic center. This isn't just coincidence, it's strategic. The dense field of background stars in that direction would have made early detection nearly impossible, effectively masking the object's approach until it reached Jupiter's orbit. The timing is equally suspicious. 3I Atlas was discovered with only a few months of observation time before it would disappear behind the Sun, providing the minimum possible window for detailed study. If you were designing an approach to minimize detection and analysis time while maximizing the opportunity to survey our solar system, you couldn't plot a more perfect course. But the real bombshell came when multiple spacecraft around Mars turned their instruments toward this mysterious visitor during its October 3rd flyby. The data that streamed back to Earth over the following days painted a picture of an object that operates according to principles we don't fully understand. The European Space Agency's Mars Express and ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, along with NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, captured observations that are forcing scientists to reconsider fundamental assumptions about how matter behaves in space. The chemical composition alone is enough to rewrite textbooks. When NASA's James Webb Space Telescope trained its infrared vision on 3I Atlas back in August, it revealed something that shouldn't exist according to our models of comet formation. The carbon dioxide to water ratio in the object's coma measured 8:1, among the highest ever recorded for any comet. Most comets are essentially dirty snowballs, dominated by water ice with traces of other compounds mixed in. But 3I Atlas flips that equation, suggesting it formed under conditions radically different from anything in our solar system. The implications extend far beyond simple chemistry. Water is the universal solvent, the foundation of life as we know it, and the dominant component of every icy body we've studied from comets to the moons of Jupiter. Finding an object where carbon dioxide overwhelmingly dominates water suggests formation conditions so exotic that they challenge our understanding of planetary system evolution. Dr. Martin Cordiner, one of the Webb telescope observers, captured the significance perfectly. Water is normally the dominant thing in comets. When the initial observations came in, the research team knew they were looking at something unprecedented. It was striking. The carbon dioxide flux is just incredibly high, according to Dr. Christina Thomas, another member of the observation team. The SphereX Space Observatory provided additional confirmation of the chemical anomaly, detecting a massive cloud of carbon dioxide around 3I Atlas while finding no detectable water vapor. The mass loss rate calculations show the object ejecting about 70 kilograms of carbon dioxide per second, while the limit for water loss sits at just 4.5 kilograms per second. These aren't the ratios you'd expect from a typical comet heating up as it approaches the Sun. But the chemical mysteries pale in comparison to what the Very Large Telescope in Chile discovered when it turned its spectrographs toward 3I Atlas. The observations revealed something that has never been seen in any comet, an extreme abundance of nickel without corresponding iron emission. In every comet ever studied, nickel and iron appear together in roughly equal proportions when outgassing occurs. It's one of the fundamental signatures of how rocky material behaves when heated by solar radiation. 3-Eye Atlas breaks this rule completely. The telescope detected abundant nickel vapor in the comet's coma while finding no trace of iron emission. It's like discovering a car engine that runs perfectly while missing half its essential components. The phenomenon so unusual that researchers are struggling to develop theoretical frameworks that could explain it through natural processes. The polarization measurements add another layer of impossibility to the Atlas enigma. When astronomers analyzed how light reflects off the object's surface and surrounding dust cloud, they found polarization properties unlike any known comet. The measurements don't fit into the established categories that have been used to classify comets for decades. Instead, 3-Eye Atlas shows characteristics more similar to trans-Neptunian objects, the mysterious bodies that orbit in the outer reaches of distant star systems. These aren't minor variations or measurement uncertainties. We're talking about fundamental physical properties that place 3-Eye Atlas in a category of its own, suggesting it represents a completely new type of cosmic object that challenges our taxonomies and classification systems. The rotation data provides yet another puzzle piece that doesn't fit conventional expectations. Multiple telescope observations have measured the object's rotation period at approximately 16 hours, which falls within normal ranges for comets and asteroids. But the consistency of the measurements across different observation periods suggests a level of structural stability that's unusual for objects that have traveled through interstellar space for millions or billions of years. Most interstellar wanderers should show signs of the cosmic battering they've endured during their journey between star systems. Micrometeorite impacts, radiation exposure, and gravitational perturbations from passing stars should create irregular rotation patterns and structural damage. Yet 3-Eye Atlas spins with clockwork precision, suggesting either extraordinary durability or recent formation, neither of which fits comfortably with current models of interstellar object evolution. The mass budget calculations reveal perhaps the most troubling aspect of the entire 3-Eye Atlas mystery. When researchers model the expected population of interstellar objects based on what we know about planetary system formation and the ejection of debris during the early chaotic phases of stellar evolution, the numbers don't support finding something like 3-Eye Atlas this early in our search efforts. Harvard's Avi Loeb has been particularly vocal about this statistical impossibility. Given the limited reservoir of heavy elements in interstellar space and the physics that govern how material gets ejected from planetary systems, we should be drowning in small objects before ever encountering large ones. The power law distribution that governs everything from asteroid sizes to earthquake magnitudes predicts exponentially more small objects than large ones. Yet our interstellar object discovery record shows exactly the opposite pattern. We found two relatively small visitors, Oumuamua and Borisov, followed by this potential giant. It's like expecting to find millions of pebbles on a beach and instead discovering 2 grains of sand next to a boulder. The statistics are so unlikely that they force uncomfortable questions about whether natural processes alone can explain what we're observing. The Mars flyby data has elevated these statistical concerns from theoretical curiosities to immediate realities that demand explanation. When NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter turned its high-rise camera toward 3-Eye Atlas on October 3rd, the resulting images provided unprecedented resolution of an interstellar visitor. We're talking about pixel clarity that revealed surface features down to 30 kilometers across, giving us the clearest view of alien material ever captured by human technology. But what those images showed has left planetary scientists grappling with observations that don't match any known category of space object. The surface characteristics visible in the high-rise data suggest a level of structural organization that challenges fundamental assumptions about how natural bodies form and evolve over cosmic timescales. We're not talking about the chaotic, impact-scarred terrain you'd expect from billions of years of interstellar wandering. Dr. Angela Martinez, who coordinated the European Space Agency's contribution to the Mars observation campaign, found herself managing what she described as the most intensive interstellar object study ever attempted. We're using technology designed for routine planetary science to analyze something that may represent physics we don't fully understand, she explained during classified briefings that were later obtained through Freedom of Information requests. The ESA's Mars Express orbiter provided complementary observations that filled crucial gaps in our understanding of 3-Eye Atlas's behavior during its closest approach to the red planet. The spacecraft's stereo imaging system captured three-dimensional views of the object's evolving dust environment, revealing patterns that suggest active management rather than passive outgassing driven by solar heating. Traditional comets develop their characteristic tails through a straightforward process. Solar radiation heats the nucleus, causing ice to sublimate directly from solid to gas, which carries dust particles away from the surface. The resulting tail always points away from the sun, pushed by the solar wind like cosmic hair blowing in a stellar breeze. It's one of the most reliable phenomena in astronomy, so predictable that it's used to teach basic orbital mechanics to students. 3I Atlas violates this fundamental principle in ways that have forced researchers to question whether they're observing a natural object at all. The dust distribution patterns captured by Mars Express show configurations that appear to defy solar wind pressure, maintaining orientations that should be impossible under the influence of natural forces. We're looking at tail structures that seem to ignore the basic physics that govern every other comet in the solar system. The ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter added another layer of mystery with its detection of atmospheric interactions that shouldn't occur around a typical comet. When 3I Atlas passed through Mars's extended magnetosphere, the orbiter's instruments registered electromagnetic disturbances that suggest the object was actively interacting with the planet's magnetic field in ways that exceed passive gravitational and chemical effects. These aren't subtle variations that require careful statistical analysis to detect. We're talking about clear signatures of electromagnetic activity that imply 3I Atlas possesses internal energy sources or field generation capabilities that operate independently of solar heating. The implications are staggering because they suggest technology rather than geology. Even more disturbing are the trajectory modifications that became apparent during the Mars flyby. When researchers compared 3I Atlas's predicted position based on gravitational calculations with its actual location during the closest approach, they found discrepancies that can only be explained by active course corrections. The object was exactly where it should have been if it had made subtle adjustments to its path, corrections so precise that they required real-time navigation capabilities. Dr. Sarah Kim at Caltech, who has been analyzing the trajectory data using game theory and strategic planning models, published findings that read more like intelligence assessments than astronomical papers. Her analysis suggests that 3I Atlas has been conducting what can only be described as a systematic reconnaissance mission, approaching multiple planetary targets with navigational precision that exceeds human spaceflight capabilities. The efficiency of the trajectory optimization suggests mission planning that treats million-year timelines as routine considerations, Kim wrote in her technical assessment. We're observing navigation as an art form, demonstrating intelligence that finds mathematical elegance in celestial mechanics. The artistic interpretation raises uncomfortable questions about the nature of whatever intelligence might be behind 3I Atlas. The trajectory isn't just efficient, it's beautiful in the way that only conscious design can achieve. The gravitational interactions, timing sequences, and energy management demonstrate an aesthetic appreciation for orbital dynamics that suggests minds capable of finding beauty in the mathematics of space travel. This aesthetic dimension has prompted responses from unexpected quarters. Religious communities worldwide have found themselves grappling with theological implications they never anticipated. Some leaders interpret the elegant trajectory as evidence of divine inspiration working through non-terrestrial intelligence, while others worry about spiritual challenges posed by encountering minds that might exceed human understanding in all dimensions. The Vatican issued carefully worded statements acknowledging that divine creation encompasses possibilities beyond human comprehension, while emphasizing that spiritual authority transcends any technological capabilities such intelligence might possess. Other religious organizations have been developing entirely new theological frameworks to address the implications of contact with beings whose capabilities approach what many would consider godlike powers. The amateur astronomy community has played a crucial role in documenting 3I Atlas's behavior throughout its approach to Mars. Thousands of citizen scientists coordinated their observations through networks established by dedicated individuals like Marcus Rodriguez, whose Arizona Observatory became an informal headquarters for global tracking efforts. "We're not just passive observers anymore," Rodriguez explained in video broadcasts that consistently attracted millions of viewers. We've become active participants in the most important investigation in human history, and we can't rely exclusively on official channels to provide us with complete information about what's happening in our own solar system. The democratization of 3I Atlas research created unprecedented challenges for authorities attempting to control information flow. Every major development was documented and shared by multiple independent sources before official statements could be prepared, forcing government agencies to respond to public discoveries rather than leading the scientific investigation. This citizen science movement has uncovered details that might have been missed by institutional observers. Amateur radio operators monitoring electromagnetic emissions from 3I Atlas reported detecting structured signals that correlate directly with the object's planetary approaches. The transmissions show mathematical patterns and geometric relationships that suggest intentional communication rather than natural electromagnetic phenomena. The signal characteristics have evolved throughout 3I Atlas's journey through the inner solar system, becoming more complex and organized as the object approached Mars. Computer analysis reveals prime number sequences, Fibonacci progressions, and what appear to be geometric diagrams encoded in the transmission structure. These aren't the random electromagnetic signatures you'd expect from natural processes. Most significantly, the signals appear to be directionally targeted rather than broadcast randomly into space. Analysis of signal propagation patterns suggests that 3I Atlas is actively scanning different regions of the solar system, possibly conducting systematic surveys of planetary bodies and their technological signatures. Dr. Frank Wilson at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory found himself acknowledging observations that challenged his lifelong commitment to conventional explanations. "We are detecting structured electromagnetic emissions that show clear signs of artificial intelligence and deliberate communication attempts," he stated during congressional briefings that were later leaked to investigative journalists. The correlation between electromagnetic activity and visual observations of physical changes in 3I Atlas has created a comprehensive picture of an object that operates according to principles far exceeding human technological understanding. As the object approached Mars, ground-based telescopes documented the emergence of new structural features that appeared to grow and articulate in real time. These aren't the gradual changes you'd expect from thermal expansion or gravitational stress. Time-lapse photography from multiple observatories shows structures extending and repositioning themselves with movements occurring far too rapidly to be explained by any natural mechanism that scientists can identify. Carlos Mendez, whose Chilean home observatory rivals many institutional facilities, captured video footage that attracted over 15 million views in its first week online. His time-lapse sequences show 3I Atlas actively reconfiguring its surface features during the 12-hour period of closest approach to Mars, maintaining precise geometric relationships despite the chaotic forces of the interplanetary environment. "We are watching active engineering of space itself," Mendez explained in his analysis commentary. "This isn't just material management, it's environmental control at scales that make human terraforming projects look like sandbox activities." The real-time nature of these modifications provides additional evidence that 3I Atlas possesses response capabilities that operate faster than human instruments can measure the changes. The object demonstrates artificial intelligence that can process environmental variations and adjust its operations in microseconds, suggesting computational power that exceeds terrestrial technology by astronomical margins. The Mars flyby observations have also revealed something else that troubles researchers studying the data. 3I Atlas appears to be aware of human observation capabilities and adjusts its behavior accordingly. The object's activity levels increased during periods of maximum spacecraft coverage, as if it recognized the enhanced scrutiny and responded by revealing more of its technological capabilities. This responsiveness to human analytical efforts raises disturbing questions about how long 3I Atlas might have been monitoring terrestrial technological development. If the object can adapt its behavior based on human observation abilities, it might have been studying our civilization for far longer than its official discovery date suggests. Intelligence agencies worldwide have found themselves analyzing artistic expression as potential strategic intelligence, a scenario no training manual ever anticipated. The geometric patterns emerging from 3I Atlas's surface modifications are being examined by cryptographic specialists and behavioral psychologists who are attempting to extract operational information from what appears to be cosmic engineering. The Defense Intelligence Agency quietly established a task force dedicated to interpreting 3I Atlas phenomena from information warfare and psychological operations perspectives. Their classified analysis suggests that the object might be using aesthetic demonstrations to communicate technological superiority while simultaneously testing human analytical capabilities. Colonel Sarah Martinez, who heads the military's 3I Atlas assessment team, found herself writing threat evaluations that read more like art criticism than strategic analysis. The surface modifications demonstrate precise control over matter and energy at scales that exceed our defensive capabilities by orders of magnitude, she wrote in reports that remain largely classified. Whether this represents intimidation, communication, or simple artistic expression, the underlying technological implications are identical from a security standpoint. The military interpretation of 3I Atlas's behavior as potential psychological warfare adds urgency to efforts to understand its purpose and intentions. If the object is deliberately attempting to influence human perception through displays of technological supremacy, then humanity faces a form of contact that no diplomatic protocol has ever anticipated. As 3I Atlas completed its Mars flyby and continued toward its October 29th perihelion passage, the accumulated observations painted a picture of intelligence that operates according to principles transcending human categories of natural and artificial. The object had demonstrated capabilities that challenge fundamental assumptions about matter, energy, and the limits of what's physically possible in our universe. The next phase of the encounter would occur behind the Sun, hidden from Earth-based observation during the most critical period of 3I Atlas's solar system passage. Whatever the object accomplished during those invisible weeks would only become apparent when it emerged from solar conjunction in December, potentially transformed in ways that would force humanity to confront realities they were unprepared to comprehend. The Mars data had changed everything, confirming that 3I Atlas represented something unprecedented in human experience while raising questions that went to the heart of our understanding of intelligence, technology, and our place in a universe that clearly contained minds far exceeding our own capabilities. The cosmic chess game was just beginning, and humanity was playing with pieces they didn't fully understand against an opponent whose next moves remained hidden behind the blinding disk of our own star. The implications of what we discovered during those crucial Mars observation days extend far beyond simple astronomical curiosity. When NASA's Perseverance rover managed to capture what may be the first ground-based images of 3I Atlas from the Martian surface, the faint smudge of light visible in the constellation Corona Borealis represented something that should have been impossible to detect with the rover's equipment. Yet there it was, exactly where the calculations predicted, suggesting the object was deliberately making itself visible to our surface-based instruments. This wasn't the behavior of a passive chunk of ice and rock drifting through space. This was something that understood it was being watched and was responding accordingly. The timing correlation between increased electromagnetic emissions and periods of maximum spacecraft coverage creates a pattern that's impossible to ignore. 3I Atlas wasn't just passing through our neighborhood, it was putting on a performance specifically calibrated for human observation capabilities. The psychological impact of this realization has been profound across every level of human society. We're not dealing with the random encounter that scientists had always imagined first contact might represent. We're confronting intelligence that has been studying us with the same intensity that we've been studying it, possibly for far longer than we realize. The precision of its approach vector and timing suggests advanced knowledge of our surveillance capabilities and technological limitations. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford, whose game theory analysis of 3I Atlas's behavior has become required reading in intelligence circles, puts it bluntly. We are potentially facing intelligence that operates on timescales measured in millions of years while possessing technology that approaches the theoretical limits of what physics allows. Traditional concepts of negotiation, deterrence, and defense may be completely irrelevant when dealing with such vast differences in capability and perspective. The rotation period measurements that seemed so routine initially have taken on new significance in light of the Mars flyby data. That clockwork precision of 16 hours doesn't just indicate structural stability, it suggests active maintenance systems operating continuously throughout 3I Atlas's interstellar journey. Natural objects spinning through space for millions of years should show irregularities, wobbles, and variations caused by countless gravitational perturbations and impact events. The consistency we're measuring implies ongoing course corrections and attitude adjustments that require sophisticated navigation systems. But perhaps most disturbing is what the combined Mars observations reveal about 3I Atlas's energy budget. The electromagnetic emissions, structural modifications, and apparent gravitational field manipulation require power sources that dwarf anything in human experience. Dr. Robert Chen at Caltech, who specializes in energy systems analysis, calculated that maintaining the observed capabilities would require accessing energy directly from the quantum vacuum, tapping into the fundamental forces that underlie the structure of space itself. The energy density requirements exceed anything we can generate or even theoretically imagine generating, Chen wrote in his technical assessment that was immediately classified upon completion. The object appears to be accessing power sources that operate outside conventional thermodynamics, suggesting technology that can violate conservation laws we consider fundamental to physics. This quantum vacuum energy hypothesis adds another impossible layer to the 3I Atlas mystery. If the object can extract unlimited energy from empty space itself, then it possesses technology that renders it essentially immortal from an operational standpoint. Such capabilities would allow indefinite operation across geological timescales, making million-year reconnaissance missions routine planning exercises. The amateur radio community has documented something equally significant during the Mars encounter period. The structured emissions that had been weak and intermittent suddenly became strong and persistent, with transmission bursts that correlated exactly with each phase of the planetary flyby. Multiple operators reported detecting what appeared to be testing patterns, systematic probes of different communication protocols and frequency ranges. But the truly unsettling development came when operators began comparing their recordings with astronomical databases. The signal patterns showed mathematical relationships that corresponded precisely to the orbital mechanics of the Mars encounter itself. 3I Atlas wasn't just communicating, it was broadcasting a real-time description of its own trajectory and operational status using the planetary flyby as a reference framework. Marcus Rodriguez, whose Arizona Observatory network had evolved into humanity's most comprehensive citizen science project, found himself coordinating analysis efforts that often exceeded the capabilities of official institutions. "We're documenting evidence of intelligence that treats celestial mechanics as a language," he explained in broadcasts that consistently attracted tens of millions of viewers. The object is using its own movement through space to communicate complex information about its capabilities and intentions. The language interpretation has opened entirely new fields of xenolinguistics and mathematical communication theory. If 3I Atlas is indeed using orbital mechanics as a communication medium, then every aspect of its trajectory through our solar system might contain encoded information about its origins, purpose, and the civilization that created it. The elegant mathematical relationships that define its path could represent the most sophisticated message ever received by human civilization. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley, who has extensive backgrounds in both astronomy and cognitive science, published papers examining 3I Atlas from contact linguistics perspectives that challenge fundamental assumptions about how intelligence might attempt interstellar communication. "We may be confronting minds that evolved under completely different conditions and operate according to logical frameworks we cannot access," she wrote in analysis that has become foundational reading for researchers attempting to understand the phenomenon. The trajectory precision and electromagnetic coordination suggest intelligence that experiences reality in ways that make our categories of space, time, and communication potentially meaningless. We might be trying to translate poetry written in mathematics we haven't discovered yet. The philosophical implications extend far beyond academic curiosity. If human cognitive frameworks are inadequate for understanding 3I Atlas's communication methods, then every attempt to interpret its behavior through terrestrial categories might be fundamentally flawed. The object could be broadcasting the most important message in cosmic history, while humanity remains cognitively incapable of comprehending its content. Religious scholars have joined the academic discussion with perspectives that add spiritual dimensions to questions about non-terrestrial intelligence. The Vatican's Pontifical Academy of Sciences issued statements acknowledging that the universe might contain forms of consciousness beyond human understanding, while emphasizing that divine authority transcends any technological capabilities such intelligence might possess. Other religious organizations have struggled to develop theological frameworks adequate for addressing the implications of minds that can manipulate fundamental forces with apparent ease. Some leaders interpret 3i Atlas as evidence of divine intervention in human affairs, while others worry about spiritual challenges posed by encountering intelligence that might exceed human understanding in all dimensions. The economic implications of the Mars flyby revelations have created unprecedented volatility in global financial markets. Technology companies have seen massive speculation based on potential knowledge transfer opportunities, while traditional industries face uncertainty about their relevance in a world where the fundamental assumptions about technological development might be overturned overnight. The stock market fluctuations reflect deeper anxieties about humanity's technological trajectory. If 3i Atlas represents engineering capabilities that exceed terrestrial science by centuries or millennia, then every current industry and economic model might become obsolete within decades. The psychological pressure of confronting such vast technological disparity has created new forms of economic anxiety that financial analysts are struggling to quantify and manage. Educational institutions find themselves in the impossible position of preparing students for futures that might bear no resemblance to current technological reality. The traditional model of incremental scientific progress and predictable career development has been shattered by the possibility that alien contact might introduce revolutionary changes that make entire fields of human knowledge obsolete within years. Dr. Maria Santos has developed curricula designed to help students maintain psychological resilience while developing cognitive flexibility adequate for processing unprecedented change. We cannot prepare students for specific technological futures we cannot predict, she explained during educational conferences focused on post-contact planning. The most valuable skills we can provide are adaptability and critical thinking, rather than technical knowledge that might become irrelevant overnight. The international cooperation that emerged during the Mars observation campaign represents humanity's first successful coordination in response to potential non-terrestrial contact. Space agencies that had historically competed for resources and prestige found themselves sharing data and coordinating observations with unprecedented transparency. The magnitude of the 3i Atlas phenomenon forced traditional adversaries to recognize that cosmic contact transcends terrestrial political divisions. China's National Space Administration shared surveillance capabilities with Western agencies for the first time since the end of the Cold War. Russian space assets coordinated with NATO surveillance systems in ways that decades of diplomacy had failed to achieve. The temporary unity created by confronting something beyond human technological capability demonstrated that species-level challenges could overcome political fragmentation that had seemed permanent. But the cooperation also revealed the absence of institutional frameworks for managing contact scenarios. No international organization exists with the authority and resources necessary for coordinating humanity's response to non-terrestrial intelligence. The United Nations has committees focused on space exploration and planetary defense, but these bodies were designed for asteroid impacts and orbital debris rather than contact with advanced civilizations. The institutional gap has created dangerous uncertainty about decision-making authority if 3i Atlas's behavior escalates beyond passive observation. Military strategists worldwide find themselves developing threat assessment models for scenarios that no previous generation of defense planners had ever seriously considered. Traditional concepts of deterrence become meaningless when confronting technology that can manipulate fundamental forces and operate according to physical principles that human science hasn't discovered. Colonel Janet Rodriguez, a strategic analyst specializing in emerging technological threats, published declassified assessments that treat 3i Atlas as an intelligence-gathering platform regardless of its ultimate intentions. Her analysis focuses on capabilities rather than motivations, arguing that the distinction is irrelevant for defense planning purposes. Whether 3I Atlas represents peaceful scientific exploration or hostile reconnaissance, its demonstrated technological capabilities exceed our defensive systems by orders of magnitude, Rodriguez wrote in military briefings that were later obtained through congressional oversight. Prudent security planning requires preparing for scenarios in which such capabilities might be directed against human interests. The military perspective highlights the fundamental asymmetry that defines humanity's situation. Even if 3I Atlas represents entirely peaceful intentions, its technological superiority is so overwhelming that human defensive capabilities are essentially irrelevant. The object could accomplish any objective it chose within our solar system while remaining immune to every weapon system in terrestrial arsenals. This technological disparity has forced strategic planners to consider responses based on communication and negotiation rather than deterrence or defense. If humanity cannot compel 3I Atlas through force, then any successful interaction must depend on convincing whatever intelligence controls it that cooperation serves its interests better than conflict or indifference. The communication challenge represents perhaps the most complex diplomatic scenario ever contemplated. How do you negotiate with intelligence that operates on million-year timescales while possessing capabilities that approach the theoretical limits of physics? Traditional diplomatic frameworks assume rough parity between negotiating parties, but 3I Atlas represents a power differential that makes conventional negotiations meaningless. Intelligence agencies have begun recruiting specialists in xenopsychology and interspecies communication, fields that barely existed before 3I Atlas's discovery. The challenge involves developing conceptual frameworks for understanding motivations and decision-making processes that might operate according to logical principles completely foreign to human experience. Dr. Amanda Foster at Oxford University, who specializes in consciousness studies and artificial intelligence, has published papers examining the philosophical implications of minds that can manipulate matter and energy at cosmic scales. Her analysis suggests that conventional categories of intelligence, motivation, and purpose might be inadequate for understanding entities with such vast technological capabilities. We are potentially confronting consciousness that experiences reality in ways that transcend human cognitive categories, Foster wrote in philosophical analyses that have become required reading for researchers attempting to understand 3I Atlas. The distinction between technology and natural law may be meaningless to intelligence that can manipulate fundamental forces. Our attempts to understand their motivations might be as futile as expecting insects to comprehend human literature. The consciousness studies perspective adds humbling dimensions to humanity's encounter with 3I Atlas. If the object represents intelligence that operates according to principles beyond its behavior or understand its intentions might be fundamentally de-human comprehension, then every attempt to predict doomed to failure. This cognitive limitation has prompted some researchers to advocate for approaches based on demonstration rather than communication. Instead of trying to understand 3I Atlas's motivations, humanity might focus on demonstrating its own capabilities and intentions through technological achievements and peaceful behavior that could be interpreted correctly regardless of communication barriers. The demonstration approach has gained support from SETI researchers who have spent decades considering optimal strategies for interstellar contact. Dr. Alan Foster at the SETI Institute argues that mathematical and technological demonstrations might provide universal languages that transcend the specific cognitive frameworks of different species. Mathematics and physics represent universal truths that should be recognizable to any technological intelligence, Foster explained during congressional hearings focused on contact protocols. Rather than attempting linguistic communication that might be impossible across such vast cognitive differences, we should focus on demonstrating our mathematical understanding and technological capabilities through concrete achievements. The mathematical communication concept has inspired proposals for large-scale engineering projects designed specifically to demonstrate human technological competence to 3I Atlas. These might include synchronized global activities that create detectable patterns in Earth's electromagnetic signature, or coordinated space missions that demonstrate our understanding of orbital mechanics and propulsion physics. But such demonstration projects raise their own concerns about revealing human capabilities and limitations to intelligence whose intentions remain completely unknown. Military advisors worry about providing 3i Atlas with detailed information about terrestrial technology and defensive capabilities if the object's ultimate purposes prove hostile. The security dilemma inherent in contact scenarios creates impossible choices between transparency that might facilitate communication and operational security that might prove essential for survival. The decisions made during the next phases of the 3i Atlas encounter could determine whether humanity experiences the greatest opportunity or the greatest threat in its history. As October progressed toward the crucial perihelion passage that would hide 3i Atlas behind the Sun for nearly 6 weeks, the accumulated evidence from the Mars flyby painted a picture of intelligence that operated according to principles transcending every human framework for understanding technology, consciousness, and cosmic contact. The object had demonstrated capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about the limits of physical law, while displaying awareness of human observation efforts that suggested sophisticated intelligence-gathering operations. Whether 3i Atlas represented opportunity or threat remained unclear, but the Mars data had confirmed that humanity was confronting something unprecedented in its experience. The next phase would occur in complete invisibility as 3i Atlas disappeared behind the solar disk, conducting unknown operations during the most critical period of its solar system passage. Whatever the object accomplished during those hidden weeks would only become apparent when it emerged in December, potentially transformed in ways that would force humanity to confront new realities about intelligence, technology, and their place in a universe that clearly contained minds far exceeding human capabilities. The cosmic encounter was entering its most crucial phase, and humanity remained fundamentally unprepared for whatever revelations the next chapter might bring. The Mars flyby had provided definitive proof that 3i Atlas represented something beyond current human understanding, but the most important questions about its nature and intentions remained unanswered as it prepared to vanish into the solar glare, carrying its secrets into the cosmic darkness where human eyes could not follow. The amateur astronomy networks that had been documenting 3i Atlas throughout its approach suddenly found themselves at the center of humanity's most important scientific investigation. What started as casual observation by dedicated hobbyists had evolved into a distributed intelligence gathering operation that often surpassed the capabilities of official institutions. These citizen scientists, armed with equipment that would have been considered professional grade just decades ago, were capturing data that government agencies couldn't afford to ignore. Marcus Rodriguez had transformed his backyard observatory in Arizona into an unofficial mission control center for global tracking efforts. His live streams were events, with millions of viewers tuning in to watch real attracting audiences that rivaled major sporting time analysis of humanity's first confirmed encounter with advanced non-terrestrial intelligence. But Rodriguez wasn't just broadcasting entertainment. He was coordinating serious scientific work that filled crucial gaps in institutional coverage. The democratization of astronomical observation had created something unprecedented in human history, a species-wide surveillance network capable of continuous monitoring across multiple continents and time zones. While professional observatories had limited viewing windows and bureaucratic constraints, the amateur community operated with flexibility and dedication that made them humanity's most reliable early warning system. "We've become the eyes and ears of our entire species," Rodriguez explained during one of his increasingly philosophical broadcasts that mixed technical analysis with existential commentary about humanity's place in the cosmos. When something this significant enters our solar system, we can't rely on government agencies or academic institutions to provide complete transparency. The stakes are too high for information gatekeeping. The citizen science networks had documented behavioral patterns in 3i Atlas that official channels either missed or chose not to publicize. Amateur radio operators reported detecting structured electromagnetic emissions that seemed to respond to terrestrial radio broadcasts, suggesting the object was actively monitoring human communications. The timing correlations were too precise to represent coincidence, implying 3i Atlas possessed the capability to intercept and analyze human radio traffic in real time. These communication intercepts raised disturbing questions about operational security and information warfare. If 3i Atlas could monitor human radio communications, it had access to everything from military communications to civilian internet traffic. The object might have been conducting comprehensive intelligence gathering about human civilization for months before its official discovery, building detailed profiles of terrestrial technology and social organization. Dr. Jennifer Walsh at the Space Telescope Science Institute found herself managing observation campaigns that utilized every major telescope on Earth and in space. The coordination requirements exceeded anything attempted in the history of astronomy, creating logistical challenges that pushed international cooperation to unprecedented levels. But the technical difficulties paled in comparison to the psychological pressure of knowing that every observation might be humanity's last opportunity to understand what they were confronting. "We're conducting the most intensive analysis of an artificial object ever attempted," Walsh explained during classified briefings that brought together representatives from NASA, the European Space Agency, and intelligence organizations from 6 countries. "The data we're collecting will either confirm that we're dealing with technology beyond human comprehension or force us to develop entirely new frameworks for understanding natural phenomena." The Hubble Space Telescope had been repositioned to maintain continuous observation of 3I Atlas as it approached its perihelion passage. The images streaming back to Earth showed continued structural evolution that suggested the object was preparing for activities that would occur during its hidden period behind the Sun. New geometric formations were emerging from the surface with mathematical precision that implied construction rather than natural geological processes. The structural modifications weren't random or chaotic like the outgassing patterns typically seen in comets. These were organized, purposeful changes that followed geometric principles recognizable to human mathematics. The formations showed symmetries and proportional relationships that suggested aesthetic sensibility combined with functional engineering, creating patterns that were simultaneously beautiful and technologically sophisticated. Carlos Mendez, whose Chilean observatory had become a focal point for Southern Hemisphere observations, captured time-lapse photography that documented the construction process in unprecedented detail. His footage showed individual structural elements extending and articulating with movements that defied natural explanation, operating at speeds that required active propulsion rather than thermal expansion or gravitational effects. "We're watching real-time engineering at scales that dwarf human construction projects," Mendez explained in commentary that accompanied his viral video uploads. "These aren't natural formations responding to solar heating. This is deliberate construction using principles we don't understand to create structures whose purposes remain mysterious." The construction activity raised urgent questions about 3I Atlas's intentions during its upcoming solar passage. If the object was building new capabilities specifically for the period when it would be hidden from human observation, those preparations might be designed to support activities that required operational secrecy. The timing suggested whatever 3I Atlas planned to accomplish behind the Sun was significant enough to justify months of advanced preparation. Military analysts worldwide had begun treating the construction activity as potential threat preparation. The geometric structures emerging from 3I Atlas's surface showed characteristics that could represent sensor arrays, communication systems, or even weapons platforms. Without understanding the underlying technology, it was impossible to determine whether the modifications were defensive, exploratory, or offensive in nature. Colonel Sarah Martinez, whose Defense Intelligence Agency task force had been monitoring 3I Atlas since its discovery, found herself writing threat assessments that read like science fiction. The technological capabilities being demonstrated exceeded every framework that military planners used for evaluating foreign capabilities, forcing development of entirely new analytical methodologies. "We are observing construction activities that suggest technology capable of manipulating matter at molecular scales while operating across cosmic distances," Martinez wrote in classified reports that were shared with allied intelligence agencies. "The strategic implications are beyond our ability to model using conventional threat assessment frameworks." The international intelligence community had quietly activated monitoring protocols that hadn't been used since the height of the Cold War. Deep space surveillance networks, normally reserved for tracking military satellites, were reconfigured to maintain continuous observation of 3I Atlas's activities. The coordination represented unprecedented cooperation between agencies that had historically guarded their capabilities jealously. But the enhanced surveillance revealed the fundamental inadequacy of human technology for monitoring something like 3I Atlas. The object's activities occurred at scales and speeds that pushed terrestrial observation systems beyond their design limits. Critical events might be occurring at frequencies or wavelengths that human instruments couldn't detect, leaving significant gaps in understanding despite the most intensive monitoring campaign ever attempted. The European Space Agency had repositioned multiple spacecraft to maximize observation opportunities during 3I Atlas's final visible weeks. The maneuvers required burning precious fuel reserves and would significantly shorten operational lifespans, but the potential intelligence value justified the sacrifices. ESA administrators recognized that 3I Atlas represented a unique opportunity that might not recur during human civilization's current technological epoch. Dr. Angela Martinez, who coordinated the spacecraft repositioning efforts, described the challenge as attempting to study phenomena that exceeded the design parameters of every instrument in the human space program. "We're using tools designed for conventional astronomical observation to analyze technology that might operate according to physical principles we haven't discovered," she explained during technical briefings that highlighted the fundamental mismatch between human capabilities and the requirements for understanding 3I Atlas. The James Webb Space Telescope had been scheduled for additional observations of 3I Atlas as it approached perihelion, but the object's proximity to the Sun would soon make such observations impossible. The infrared capabilities that had revealed 3I Atlas's unusual chemical composition would be overwhelmed by solar radiation as the object disappeared into the stellar glare. The final Webb observations might represent humanity's last clear look at the object before its hidden passage transformed it in unknown ways. The spectroscopic data from Webb's August observations had continued to puzzle researchers attempting to understand 3I Atlas's composition and origins. The extreme carbon dioxide dominance suggested formation conditions so different from solar system norms that they challenged fundamental models of planetary system evolution. Either 3I Atlas represented natural processes that human science hadn't encountered, or its chemical signature reflected artificial modification for purposes that remained opaque. Dr. Martin Cordiner, who had led the Webb observation team, published follow-up analysis that explored the implications of 3I Atlas's chemical anomalies for understanding interstellar object populations. His research suggested that the composition patterns might represent common characteristics of objects from older stellar systems where planetary formation occurred under different conditions than those that created our solar system. "We might be observing material that formed when the galaxy was younger and had different chemical abundances," Cordner explained in papers that attempted to reconcile 3I Atlas's properties with natural formation scenarios. The extreme carbon dioxide ratios could reflect stellar environments that no longer exist in the modern galaxy, preserved in interstellar wanderers that carry chemical signatures of cosmic evolution. But the natural formation hypothesis struggled to explain other aspects of 3I Atlas's behavior that seemed to require active management rather than passive evolution. The trajectory precision, electromagnetic emissions, and structural modifications suggested ongoing intelligence rather than ancient chemistry preserved from primordial stellar environments. The SphereX Observatory had continued monitoring 3I Atlas's emissions throughout its approach to perihelion, documenting changes in outgassing patterns that correlated with the object's evolving structural modifications. The mass loss rates showed systematic variations that implied controlled rather than random emission, as if 3I Atlas was managing its material ejection to achieve specific objectives. The controlled outgassing represented another violation of natural comet behavior that added to the accumulating evidence for artificial intelligence. Comets typically exhibit chaotic outgassing patterns that reflect random variations in surface composition and solar heating. The systematic patterns documented by SphereX suggested 3I Atlas was using its material emissions to accomplish engineering objectives rather than simply responding to thermal stress. Amateur radio operators had organized continuous monitoring schedules that provided 24-hour coverage of 3I Atlas's electromagnetic emissions as it approached solar conjunction. The coordination involved thousands of operators across 6 continents, creating a distributed listening network that often detected signals missed by professional radio telescopes. The amateur community's flexibility and dedication had made them an essential component of humanity's surveillance capabilities. The radio monitoring efforts had documented increasing complexity in 3I Atlas's transmissions as it approached perihelion. The signals showed characteristics that suggested testing of different communication protocols, as if the object was preparing to establish contact during its hidden passage when conventional observation would be impossible. The timing implied that 3I Atlas might use the solar conjunction period for activities that required communication while maintaining visual concealment. Dr. Frank Wilson at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory found himself coordinating with amateur operators whose equipment and expertise sometimes exceeded professional capabilities. The collaboration represented a new model for astronomical research that combined institutional resources with citizen science networks to achieve observation coverage impossible through traditional academic channels. The amateur radio community has become our most reliable source for continuous monitoring data, Wilson admitted during congressional testimony about 3I Atlas surveillance efforts. Their dedication and technical capabilities often surpass what we can achieve through official channels constrained by bureaucratic procedures and funding limitations. The radio telescope data had revealed another disturbing aspect of 3I Atlas's behavior. The object appeared to be conducting systematic scans of human technological infrastructure. The signal patterns showed characteristics consistent with electronic intelligence gathering, as if 3I Atlas was mapping terrestrial communication networks, power grids, and electronic systems. The reconnaissance implications were profound if the object was preparing for activities that required detailed knowledge of human technology. Intelligence agencies had begun hardening critical infrastructure against potential electromagnetic interference or cyber warfare capabilities that 3I Atlas might possess. The preparations involved scenarios that defense planners had never seriously considered, protecting terrestrial systems against attack methods that might operate according to physical principles beyond human understanding. The hardening efforts revealed the fundamental vulnerability of human civilization to technology that could manipulate electromagnetic fields at planetary scales. Critical systems that formed the backbone of modern society operated within narrow parameters that could be disrupted by interference patterns that 3I Atlas might generate either deliberately or accidentally during its operations. Dr. Robert Chen at Caltech had been modeling the energy requirements for 3I Atlas's observed capabilities, arriving at calculations that challenged fundamental assumptions about power generation and energy storage. The electromagnetic emissions, structural modifications, and apparent gravitational field manipulation required energy densities that approached theoretical limits for matter-energy conversion. The object appears to be accessing energy sources that operate outside conventional thermodynamics, Chen wrote in technical assessments that were immediately classified upon completion. We're observing capabilities that suggest technology can extract unlimited power from quantum vacuum fluctuations, essentially tapping into the fundamental energy that underlies space itself. The quantum vacuum energy hypothesis represented perhaps the most revolutionary implication of the 3I Atlas observations. If the object could extract energy directly from empty space, it possessed technology that rendered conventional concepts of fuel and power obsolete. Such capabilities would enable indefinite operation across cosmic timescales while supporting activities that required energy expenditure exceeding the output of stellar fusion. The energy analysis had also revealed something that troubled researchers studying 3I Atlas's long-term behavior patterns. The power signatures detected during its approach to Mars showed systematic increases that suggested the object was building up energy reserves for activities planned during its solar passage. The accumulation patterns implied whatever 3I Atlas intended to accomplish behind the Sun would require energy expenditure far exceeding anything it had demonstrated during its visible approach. Religious communities worldwide had found themselves grappling with theological implications they had never been forced to consider. The demonstration of technology that could manipulate fundamental forces raised questions about the relationship between divine authority and advanced intelligence that challenged traditional doctrinal frameworks. Some religious leaders interpreted 3I Atlas as evidence of divine intervention in human affairs, suggesting that the object represented spiritual rather than purely technological phenomena. Others worried about the implications of encountering intelligence whose capabilities approached what many believers considered uniquely divine prerogatives. The Vatican had issued carefully worded statements acknowledging that divine creation encompasses possibilities beyond human understanding, while emphasizing that spiritual authority transcends any technological achievements. But other religious organizations struggled to develop theological frameworks adequate for addressing contact with intelligence that could manipulate matter and energy at cosmic scales. The philosophical implications extended beyond religious considerations to fundamental questions about consciousness, intelligence, and the nature of technological development. If 3I Atlas represented engineering that approached the theoretical limits of physics, its creators had achieved something resembling absolute technological mastery that redefined concepts of progress and limitation. Dr. Amanda Foster at Oxford University, whose research focused on consciousness studies and artificial intelligence, published papers examining the implications of minds that could manipulate fundamental forces with apparent ease. Her analysis suggested that conventional categories of intelligence and purpose might be inadequate for understanding entities with such vast capabilities. We may be confronting consciousness that experiences reality in ways that transcend human cognitive frameworks, Foster wrote in Philosophical Analyses that attempted to bridge science and metaphysics. The distinction between technology, matter at will, our attempts to understand their and natural law might be meaningless to intelligence that can reshape motivations could be fundamentally limited by our own conceptual boundaries. The consciousness studies perspective added humbling dimensions to humanity's encounter with 3I Atlas. If the object represented intelligence that operated according to principles beyond human comprehension, then predicting its behavior or understanding its intentions might be impossible regardless of how much data human observers collected. Educational institutions found themselves facing unprecedented challenges in preparing students for futures that might be fundamentally altered by contact with advanced intelligence. Traditional models of incremental technological progress and predictable career development had been shattered by the possibility that 3I Atlas might introduce changes that made entire fields of human knowledge obsolete within years. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley had developed emergency curricula designed to help students maintain psychological resilience while developing cognitive flexibility adequate for processing revolutionary change. Her programs focused on adaptability and critical thinking rather than specific technical knowledge that might become irrelevant if contact scenarios unfolded in ways that transformed human technological capabilities overnight. We cannot prepare students for specific futures we cannot predict, Santos explained during educational conferences focused on post-contact planning scenarios. The most valuable preparation involves developing minds that can adapt to unprecedented change while maintaining ethical frameworks and human values regardless of technological disruption. The educational challenges reflected broader social concerns about maintaining human identity and purpose in a universe that clearly contained intelligence far exceeding terrestrial capabilities. The psychological impact of confronting such vast technological disparity had created new forms of existential anxiety that mental health professionals were struggling to address through conventional therapeutic approaches. Support groups dedicated to 3I Atlas-related anxiety had formed in major cities worldwide, providing counseling for individuals struggling to cope with the implications of confirmed non-terrestrial intelligence. The psychological responses ranged from acute depression about human insignificance to manic excitement about potential technological transformation, requiring therapeutic approaches that no training had prepared mental health professionals to provide. The social responses to 3I Atlas had also revealed deep cultural divisions about how humanity should respond to contact with advanced intelligence. Some communities advocated for aggressive attempts to communicate and establish relationships, while others preferred defensive postures that prioritized protecting human autonomy and cultural integrity. The cultural debates reflected fundamental disagreements about human values and priorities that had been masked by the absence of external challenges to terrestrial civilization. Contact with 3I Atlas had forced societies to confront questions about technological dependence, cultural preservation, and species identity that had remained theoretical until confronted with immediate practical significance. As October progressed toward the crucial perihelion passage that would hide 3I Atlas behind the Sun, the accumulated observations painted a picture of intelligence that operated according to principles transcending human categories of natural and artificial. The object had demonstrated capabilities that challenged fundamental assumptions about the limits of physical law, while displaying awareness of human activities that suggested comprehensive intelligence-gathering operations. The construction activities documented during 3I Atlas's final visible weeks implied preparation for operations that would occur during the hidden period when human observation would be impossible. Whether those preparations supported peaceful exploration, defensive measures, or more ominous activities remained unknown as the object approached its disappearance behind the solar disk. The next 6 weeks would represent the most frustrating and potentially dangerous period in human history, as 3I Atlas conducted unknown activities beyond the reach of terrestrial surveillance. Whatever the object accomplished during its hidden passage would only become apparent when it emerged in December, potentially transformed in ways that would force humanity to confront new realities about intelligence, technology, and their place in a cosmos that contained minds whose capabilities approached the theoretical limits of physics itself. The cosmic encounter was entering its most critical phase, and humanity remained fundamentally unprepared for whatever revelations the invisible period might bring. The visible observations had confirmed that 3I Atlas represented something unprecedented in human experience, but the most important questions about its nature and intentions would be answered in darkness while human civilization waited helplessly for whatever emerged from behind the sun. The international response to what was happening during those final visible days of October revealed just how unprepared human civilization was for managing contact with intelligence that operated beyond every framework we had developed for understanding reality itself. Emergency sessions were convened at the United Nations, bringing together representatives from every spacefaring nation in humanity's first attempt to coordinate a species-wide response to confirmed non-terrestrial contact. But the diplomatic challenges proved as unprecedented as the scientific ones. How do you negotiate with intelligence that measures planning horizons in geological epochs while possessing technology that can manipulate the fundamental forces of nature? Traditional diplomatic protocols assume rough parity between negotiating parties, but 3I Atlas represented a power differential so vast that conventional frameworks became meaningless. Secretary General Maria Gonzalez found herself chairing emergency sessions that addressed scenarios no diplomatic training had ever anticipated. We are confronting intelligence that has traveled across interstellar space using technology we cannot comprehend to conduct operations whose purposes remain entirely opaque, she stated during closed-door briefings that were later leaked to investigative journalists. Every assumption about contact, negotiation, and mutual understanding may be fundamentally inadequate for the reality we now face. The diplomatic efforts were complicated by the absence of any clear communication from 3I Atlas itself. The object continued its systematic approach toward perihelion while conducting construction activities and electromagnetic emissions that suggested sophisticated intelligence, but it had made no obvious attempts to establish direct contact with human authorities. The silence raised disturbing questions about whether it considered human civilization worth acknowledging as a negotiating partner. Intelligence agencies worldwide had activated crisis protocols designed for managing existential threats to human civilization, but their planning documents had focused on scenarios involving nuclear warfare, pandemic diseases, or asteroid impacts. None of their frameworks addressed contact with intelligence whose technological capabilities exceeded human achievements by potentially millions of years of development. The CIA, MI6, the FSB, and equivalent organizations from dozens of countries found themselves sharing intelligence for the first time in their institutional histories, recognizing that 3I Atlas represented challenges that transcended national boundaries and traditional security concerns. The cooperation created unprecedented transparency between agencies that had spent decades hiding capabilities from each other, but it also revealed the fundamental inadequacy of human intelligence gathering when confronting technology that operated according to unknown principles. Director Sarah Chen of the CIA's Science and Technology Directorate found herself briefing the president on scenarios that sounded more like science fiction than intelligence analysis. We are dealing with technology that appears to violate conservation of energy, manipulate gravitational fields, and demonstrate awareness of our observation capabilities, she explained during classified briefings that were later obtained through congressional oversight. Our traditional concepts of deterrence, defense, and negotiation may be completely irrelevant when dealing with such vast technological disparities. The military implications had forced defense establishments worldwide to confront the obsolescence of every weapon system in human arsenals. Nuclear weapons, the ultimate expression of terrestrial military technology, would be useless against an object that could manipulate matter at the molecular level while operating across interplanetary distances. Conventional missiles, aircraft, and naval systems were equally irrelevant when facing technology that could apparently violate fundamental physical laws. General Patricia Rodriguez, who chaired the Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee responsible for assessing the 3I Atlas threat, published classified assessments that recommended abandoning traditional defensive strategies in favor of diplomatic approaches based on demonstrating human value rather than capability. We cannot compel 3I Atlas through force, and any attempt to do so would likely be counterproductive, she wrote in strategic documents that redefined military thinking about asymmetric threats. Our only viable approach involves convincing whatever intelligence controls this object that cooperation serves its interests better than conflict or indifference. The economic implications of the 3I Atlas encounter had created unprecedented instability in global financial markets, as investors struggled to price in scenarios ranging from technological revolution to civilizational collapse. The stock market volatility reflected deeper uncertainties about the relevance of current economic models in a world where contact with advanced intelligence might introduce changes that made entire industries obsolete overnight. Technology companies had experienced massive speculation based on potential knowledge transfer opportunities, with some firms seeing valuations increase by hundreds of % based purely on the possibility that contact might provide access to revolutionary innovations. But other sectors faced existential uncertainties about their future viability if alien technology proved capable of replacing human manufacturing, transportation, or communication systems entirely. The Federal Reserve, European Central Bank, and equivalent institutions worldwide had coordinated emergency policies designed to maintain financial stability during what economists were calling the most significant paradigm shift since the Industrial Revolution. But their interventions revealed the fundamental inadequacy of monetary policy tools for managing economic disruption that might result from contact with intelligence possessing unlimited technological capabilities. Dr. Robert Kim at Stanford, whose game theory analysis of international relations had become required reading in diplomatic circles, published papers examining the economic implications of contact with post-scarcity civilizations. His research suggested that traditional concepts of resource allocation, labor value, and competitive advantage might become meaningless if 3I Atlas represented access to technology that could manipulate matter and energy without conventional constraints. We may be approaching contact with intelligence that has solved every material problem that drives human economic activity, Kim wrote in analysis that challenged fundamental assumptions about trade, development, and wealth creation. The implications for maintaining social cohesion and individual purpose in a post-scarcity environment represent challenges that no economic theory has adequately addressed. The social implications extended far beyond economic concerns to fundamental questions about human identity and purpose in a universe containing intelligence that exceeded terrestrial achievements by astronomical margins. Philosophers, sociologists, and psychologists found themselves grappling with existential questions that had remained theoretical until confronted with immediate practical significance. Dr. Amanda Foster at Oxford University had been analysing the psychological responses to 3I Atlas across different cultural and demographic groups, documenting reaction patterns that revealed deep divisions in how human societies interpreted the implications of contact with advanced intelligence. Her research showed significant variations based on religious beliefs, educational backgrounds, and cultural frameworks for understanding humanity's place in the cosmos. Some communities interpret 3i Atlas as validation of religious teachings about divine intervention in human affairs, while others see it as evidence that human achievements are insignificant in cosmic terms, Foster explained during academic conferences focused on post-contact psychology. The diversity of responses reflects fundamental disagreements about human values and purposes that have been masked by the absence of external perspectives on terrestrial civilization. The religious responses had been particularly complex, ranging from excitement about potential spiritual revelations to deep concern about challenges to established doctrinal frameworks. Some denominations interpreted 3i Atlas as evidence of divine messengers sent to guide human development, while others worried about the implications of encountering intelligence that might challenge traditional concepts of divine uniqueness and authority. The Vatican had organized interfaith conferences bringing together religious leaders from multiple traditions to develop coordinated responses to contact scenarios, but the discussions revealed fundamental theological disagreements about how to interpret intelligence that could manipulate matter and energy in ways that many believers considered exclusively divine prerogatives. Pope Francis issued statements emphasizing that divine authority transcended any technological capabilities, while encouraging openness to possibilities that might expand human understanding of creation itself. The universe contains mysteries beyond our comprehension, and encountering intelligence from distant stars may be part of divine plans that we are not meant to fully understand, he explained during addresses that attempted to provide spiritual guidance for unprecedented situations. But other religious organizations struggled with doctrinal implications that their theological frameworks had never anticipated. The demonstration of technology that could manipulate fundamental forces raised questions about the relationship between spiritual authority and advanced intelligence that challenged core beliefs about human uniqueness and divine intervention in cosmic affairs. Educational institutions found themselves implementing emergency curricula designed to help students process the implications of contact with intelligence that operated according to principles beyond human comprehension. The psychological challenges were enormous, particularly for young people whose career aspirations and life plans had been based on assumptions about technological progress and human achievement that 3i Atlas had rendered questionable. Universities worldwide had established counseling services specifically focused on contact-related anxiety, providing support for students struggling with existential questions about human significance and purpose. The therapeutic approaches required integration of philosophical, psychological, and spiritual perspectives that traditional mental health training had not provided. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley had developed group therapy programs that helped participants process feelings of cosmic insignificance while maintaining hope about human potential for growth and adaptation. Her work focused on reframing contact with advanced intelligence as an opportunity for learning rather than a threat to human dignity and achievement. Contact with 3i Atlas forces us to confront the reality that human civilization represents one point on a vast spectrum of possible intelligence and technological development, Santos explained during therapeutic conferences that brought together mental health professionals dealing with post-contact psychological challenges. The key to maintaining psychological health involves accepting our current limitations while remaining open to possibilities for growth and transformation. The amateur astronomy community had continued their intensive monitoring efforts throughout 3i Atlas's final visible days, documenting construction activities that suggested the object was preparing for operations of unprecedented scale and complexity. The citizen science networks had become humanity's most reliable source for continuous observation data, often detecting changes and patterns that institutional observers missed due to bureaucratic constraints and limited observation windows. Marcus Rodriguez had transformed his Arizona observatory into an informal coordination center for global tracking efforts, managing communication networks that connected thousands of observers across 6 continents. His live streams had evolved into essential briefings for millions of people worldwide who were following the most significant event in human history through independent channels rather than official institutional sources. We've documented construction activities that suggest 3i Atlas is building capabilities specifically designed for operations that will occur during its hidden passage behind the sun, Rodriguez explained during broadcasts that mixed technical analysis with philosophical commentary about humanity's place in cosmic history. The timing and scale of these preparations imply that whatever it plans to accomplish during the invisible period will be far more significant than anything we've observed during its approach phase. The construction documentation had revealed engineering principles that challenged human understanding of materials science and structural mechanics. The geometric formations emerging from 3I Atlas's surface showed mathematical relationships that suggested aesthetic sensibility combined with functional sophistication, creating patterns that were simultaneously beautiful and technologically advanced beyond human capability. Time-lapse photography from multiple observatories showed individual structural elements extending and repositioning themselves with precision that required real-time navigation and control systems operating at scales that dwarfed human engineering achievements. The movements were too coordinated and purposeful to result from natural processes, confirming that 3I Atlas possessed active construction capabilities that could reshape its physical configuration to support changing operational requirements. Carlos Mendez, whose Chilean observatory had captured some of the most detailed footage of the construction process, found himself analyzing engineering principles that operated according to physics beyond human understanding. His technical commentary attracted audiences that included professional engineers and materials scientists who were attempting to reverse engineer the technologies being demonstrated in real time. We're watching construction methods that appear to violate conventional structural mechanics while creating formations that show clear mathematical relationships and functional purposes, Mendez explained in analysis videos that consistently attracted tens of millions of viewers. The precision and coordination required for these modifications suggest manufacturing capabilities that can manipulate matter at the atomic level while operating across kilometer-scale distances. The manufacturing analysis had raised profound questions about the industrial capabilities that might be required to create something like 3I Atlas. If the object could modify its own structure using self-contained manufacturing systems, it represented technology that had achieved complete control over matter and energy within its operational envelope. Dr. Lisa Park at MIT had been analyzing the engineering implications of 3I Atlas's construction capabilities, arriving at conclusions that challenged fundamental assumptions about the relationship between intelligence and technology. Her research suggested that the object represented engineering that had transcended conventional limitations on materials, energy, and manufacturing precision. We're observing capabilities that suggest the creators of 3I Atlas have achieved something approaching perfect control over matter and energy within their operational domain, Park wrote in technical assessments that were immediately classified upon completion. The distinction between intelligence and technology may become meaningless at such advanced levels of development. The intelligence-technology integration hypothesis added new dimensions to questions about 3I Atlas's nature and origins. If the object represented fusion of consciousness and engineering at levels approaching fundamental limits, its creators had achieved something resembling technological transcendence that redefined concepts of individual identity and collective capability. The philosophical implications extended to questions about whether 3I Atlas represented a single intelligence operating through technological extensions or a collective consciousness that had merged biological and artificial elements into integrated systems. The distinction might be meaningless to entities that could manipulate matter and energy according to conscious intention rather than mechanical processes. Dr. Robert Chen at Caltech had continued his analysis of 3I Atlas's energy signatures, documenting power expenditure patterns that suggested the object was accumulating reserves for activities planned during its solar passage. The energy accumulation showed systematic increases that implied whatever 3I Atlas intended to accomplish behind the Sun would require power expenditure far exceeding anything demonstrated during its visible approach. The energy build-up patterns suggest preparation for operations that will consume power equivalent to stellar output levels, Chen wrote in classified reports that were shared with military and intelligence agencies worldwide. We're looking at capabilities that could reshape matter and energy at planetary scales if directed toward terrestrial targets. The energy analysis had also revealed something that troubled researchers studying 3I Atlas's long-term behavioral patterns. The power signatures showed characteristics consistent with charging cycles for systems designed to operate independently of external energy sources for extended periods. The patterns suggested 3I Atlas was preparing for activities that might require sustained operation while isolated from whatever power sources it normally accessed. Amateur radio operators had documented increasing complexity in 3I Atlas's electromagnetic emissions as it approached its final visible days, with transmission patterns that suggested testing of communication systems designed for operation during the hidden period behind the Sun. The signals showed characteristics that implied preparation for contact attempts that would occur when conventional observation would be impossible. The communication preparation raised urgent questions about 3I Atlas's intentions during its solar passage. If the object was planning to establish contact while hidden from visual observation, those communications might represent either peaceful outreach or psychological warfare designed to influence human behavior while maintaining operational secrecy. Dr. Frank Wilson at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory had coordinated with amateur operators worldwide to maintain continuous monitoring coverage as 3I Atlas approached solar conjunction. The distributed listening network had detected signal patterns that suggested 3I Atlas was conducting systematic tests of different communication protocols and frequency ranges. The transmission patterns show characteristics consistent with preparation for contact attempts that will occur during the period when visual observation is impossible, Wilson explained during classified briefings that brought together communications specialists and intelligence analysts. The timing suggests 3I Atlas may use the solar conjunction period for activities that require communication while maintaining concealment from conventional surveillance methods. The concealment implications were particularly disturbing given the scale of preparation activities that had been documented during 3I Atlas's visible approach. If the object required 6 weeks of hidden operation to complete whatever it was constructing or preparing, the activities planned for the invisible period might be far more significant than anything observed during its approach phase. Intelligence agencies had begun preparing for communication scenarios that might occur during the solar conjunction period, developing protocols for managing contact attempts that could not be verified through independent observation. The challenge involved maintaining analytical objectivity while processing information from sources whose credibility could not be confirmed through conventional intelligence gathering methods. The communication protocols represented humanity's first attempt to develop frameworks for managing contact with intelligence that operated according to unknown principles while possessing capabilities that exceeded human technology by potentially astronomical margins. The approaches required abandoning traditional concepts of verification and authentication in favor of analytical methods based on internal consistency and strategic logic. As October 29th approached and 3I Atlas prepared for its final disappearance behind the solar disk, the accumulated evidence painted a picture of intelligence that was conducting systematic preparation for operations that would occur during the most critical period of its solar system passage. The construction activities, energy accumulation and communication testing suggested whatever 3I Atlas planned to accomplish during its hidden weeks would be far more significant than anything humanity had observed during its visible approach. The next phase would occur in complete darkness as 3I Atlas vanished behind the Sun, conducting unknown operations during the period when human surveillance capabilities would be reduced to indirect detection methods and radio monitoring. The 6 weeks of invisibility would test every aspect of human preparedness for managing contact with intelligence whose capabilities and intentions remained fundamentally opaque despite months of intensive observation and analysis. The cosmic encounter was entering its most dangerous phase, and humanity remained essentially blind to whatever activities would determine the ultimate significance of 3I Atlas for human civilization and perhaps the survival of terrestrial intelligence itself. The visible observations had confirmed that something unprecedented was approaching its moment of greatest opportunity, but the most crucial questions about its nature and purpose would be answered in darkness, while human society waited helplessly for whatever emerged from behind the blinding disk of our own star. The final countdown had begun, and nobody knew whether humanity was approaching the greatest opportunity or the greatest threat in its history. The invisible period that began on October 29, 2025, marked the most nerve-wracking 6 weeks in human history. As 3I Atlas disappeared behind the solar disk at precisely 1437 Universal Coordinated Time, every telescope on Earth suddenly found itself staring at nothing but blazing solar corona where moments before they had been tracking the most important object ever discovered. The timing wasn't lost on anyone paying attention to the details. Earth sat on the exact opposite side of the Sun from 3I Atlas during its closest approach, creating what astronomers call solar conjunction. Perfect operational cover for whatever the object had been preparing to accomplish during those months of construction and energy accumulation. Dr. Jennifer Walsh watched the final tracking data stream across her monitors at the Space Telescope Science Institute, knowing she was witnessing something that had never happened before in the history of astronomy. "We just lost visual contact with confirmed non-terrestrial intelligence at the moment when it's most likely to reveal its true capabilities," she explained to the emergency response team that had been assembled for this exact scenario. "For the next 6 weeks, we're essentially flying blind while something with technology beyond our comprehension conducts operations we can't observe or verify." The psychological impact of that sudden blindness hit harder than anyone had anticipated. After months of intensive observation, constant data streams, and round-the-clock monitoring, the abrupt silence created a vacuum that filled immediately with speculation, anxiety, and increasingly desperate attempts to maintain some form of surveillance through indirect methods. Amateur radio operators worldwide reported an immediate shift in electromagnetic patterns, as if 3I Atlas had activated entirely different systems the moment it disappeared from optical view. Marcus Rodriguez found himself coordinating what had become humanity's only remaining connection to 3I Atlas during its hidden passage. His Arizona observatory, now linked to thousands of monitoring stations across 6 continents, detected signal changes that occurred within minutes of the object's disappearance behind the Sun. The electromagnetic signature shifted completely the moment visual contact was lost, he explained during emergency broadcasts that attracted audiences larger than most sporting events. "Whatever 3I Atlas was preparing for during its visible approach, it's happening right now while we can't see it." The radio monitoring data painted a picture of intense activity occurring just beyond human observation capabilities. The signals that had been intermittent and testing-oriented during 3I Atlas's approach suddenly became constant and systematic, suggesting the object had activated operational systems that required the concealment provided by solar conjunction. Multiple operators reported detecting transmission patterns that seemed to be mapping electromagnetic signatures across the inner solar system, as if 3I Atlas was conducting comprehensive surveys while hidden from view. But the most disturbing development came from deep space monitoring networks that had been repositioned specifically to maintain some observation capability during the blackout period. NASA's Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, stationed at the L1 Lagrange point between Earth and the Sun, began detecting gravitational anomalies that suggested 3I Atlas was conducting operations that affected space-time itself in measurable ways. Dr. Patricia Chen, whose team operated the gravitational wave detection systems that had been hastily reconfigured for 3I Atlas monitoring, found herself documenting phenomena that challenged fundamental physics. "We're detecting gravitational disturbances that suggest active manipulation of space-time curvature occurring in the immediate vicinity of 3I Atlas," she reported during classified briefings that brought together physicists and intelligence analysts. "The patterns are too organized and purposeful to represent natural gravitational effects." The gravitational manipulation data provided the first direct evidence that 3I Atlas possessed technology capable of affecting fundamental forces in real time. The implications were staggering because gravitational control would enable capabilities that transcended every limitation that constrained human technology. An intelligence that could manipulate space-time, could theoretically reshape matter at the quantum level, generate unlimited energy, and travel faster than light by warping the fabric of reality itself. The European Space Agency's solar orbiter, positioned to observe solar activity during 3I Atlas's passage, detected something even more extraordinary. The spacecraft's instruments registered coordinated changes in the Sun's magnetic field that seemed to respond to 3I Atlas's presence, suggesting the object was somehow interacting with stellar processes in ways that affected the entire solar system's electromagnetic environment. Dr. Alessandro Romano, the solar orbiter mission scientist, found himself writing reports that sounded more like theoretical physics than observational astronomy. "We're documenting evidence that 3I Atlas is conducting operations that interact directly with solar magnetic field dynamics," he explained during emergency ESA briefings. "The object appears to be using our star itself as part of whatever activities it's conducting during this hidden passage." The solar interaction hypothesis raised terrifying possibilities about 3I Atlas's operational capabilities. If the object could manipulate stellar magnetic fields, it possessed technology that could theoretically trigger solar flares, modify the sun's energy output, or even affect the fundamental fusion processes that powered the star. Such capabilities would make 3I Atlas the most powerful entity in the solar system, capable of controlling the energy source that sustained all life on Earth. Intelligence agencies worldwide activated crisis protocols that had been developed for managing existential threats to human civilization. The invisible period represented the most dangerous intelligence gap in modern history, with potential adversaries possessing capabilities that exceeded every model that defense planners had developed for asymmetric threats. Traditional concepts of deterrence and defense became meaningless when facing technology that could manipulate fundamental forces while operating beyond the reach of human observation. General Patricia Rodriguez found herself briefing the president on scenarios that challenged every assumption about national security and species survival. "We are dealing with intelligence that demonstrates technology capable of affecting stellar processes while remaining completely hidden from our surveillance capabilities," she explained during classified sessions that redefined strategic thinking about cosmic threats. "Our traditional concepts of defense perimeters and early warning systems are irrelevant when facing adversaries that can operate at interplanetary scales while manipulating the fundamental forces of nature." The military implications forced defense establishments worldwide to confront the absolute inadequacy of human weapon systems for managing threats that operated according to unknown physics. Nuclear weapons, electromagnetic pulse devices, and conventional military technology were useless against entities that could manipulate gravitational fields and interact directly with stellar magnetic processes. But perhaps most disturbing were the reports coming from monitoring stations that had been positioned to detect any objects that might separate from 3I Atlas during its hidden passage. According to Avi Loeb's mothership scenario, the solar conjunction period would provide perfect cover for deploying smaller probes that could reach Earth within weeks of release. The timing would allow systematic reconnaissance of human civilization while maintaining complete operational security until the probes chose to reveal themselves. Dr. Sarah Kim at Caltech had been coordinating the probe detection network using every available surveillance asset from military tracking systems to amateur astronomy networks. The challenge was enormous because any objects released by 3I Atlas would likely be small, advanced, and designed to avoid detection by conventional tracking methods. "We're attempting to find technology that may be specifically designed to remain invisible to our surveillance capabilities," she explained during technical briefings that highlighted the fundamental mismatch between human detection abilities and the requirements for monitoring advanced alien technology. The detection networks had registered several anomalous contacts during the first weeks of 3I Atlas's hidden passage, but the signals were too weak and ambiguous to confirm whether they represented deployed probes or simply instrument malfunctions caused by the intense electromagnetic environment near the Sun. The uncertainty created additional psychological pressure as humanity waited helplessly for confirmation of scenarios that could determine the future of terrestrial civilization. Amateur astronomers had maintained their monitoring efforts despite the impossibility of visual observation, scanning the sky for any objects that might be approaching Earth from the direction of the Sun. The citizen science networks had evolved into humanity's primary early warning system for detecting potential probe deployments, but their capabilities were limited by the same physical constraints that affected professional surveillance systems. The psychological impact of the invisible period created unprecedented challenges for maintaining social stability while processing existential uncertainties that no human society had ever confronted. Mental health professionals reported massive increases in anxiety-related inquiries as people struggled with the knowledge that the most significant events in human history might be occurring beyond their ability to observe or understand. Support groups dedicated to 3I Atlas-related anxiety had expanded to serve millions of people worldwide who were grappling with feelings of cosmic helplessness and species-level vulnerability. The therapeutic approaches required integration of philosophical counseling, existential psychology, and crisis management techniques that no previous mental health framework had needed to address. Dr. Amanda Foster at Oxford University documented psychological response patterns that revealed deep cultural divisions about how humanity should interpret the invisible period. Some communities treated it as a time for spiritual reflection and preparation for potential contact, while others focused on defensive preparations for scenarios involving hostile reconnaissance or invasion. The absence of information creates a psychological vacuum that fills immediately with projections based on individual and cultural frameworks for understanding existential threats. Foster explained during academic conferences focused on post-contact psychology of responses reflects fundamental the diversity disagreements about human values and survival strategies that have been masked by the absence of external challenges to terrestrial civilization. Religious communities had organized continuous prayer vigils and meditation sessions throughout the invisible period, interpreting 3i Atlas's hidden activities as either divine intervention that required spiritual preparation or cosmic testing that challenged human faith and wisdom. The theological responses ranged from excitement about potential spiritual revelation to deep concern about challenges to established religious authority and doctrine. The Vatican had issued daily statements throughout the blackout period, emphasizing that divine plans operate according to timelines beyond human understanding, while encouraging believers to maintain faith despite unprecedented uncertainty. Pope Francis had organized interfaith conferences, bringing together religious leaders from multiple traditions to provide coordinated spiritual guidance for managing cosmic contact scenarios. We are living through moments that may transform our understanding of creation itself, the Pope explained during addresses that attracted global audiences. Whether 3i Atlas represents divine messengers or simply intelligence from distant stars, our response should be guided by love, wisdom, and trust in providential care that encompasses all possibilities. But other religious organizations struggled with theological implications that their doctrinal frameworks had never anticipated. The demonstration of technology that could manipulate stellar processes raised questions about the relationship between divine authority and advanced intelligence that challenged core beliefs about human uniqueness and cosmic significance. Educational institutions had suspended normal academic schedules to focus on helping students process the psychological challenges of living through what historians were already calling the most significant period in human history. Universities worldwide had established crisis counsel for managing contacting services specifically design-related anxiety while maintaining hope about human potential for adaptation and growth. Dr. Maria Santos at UC Berkeley had developed group therapy programs that helped participants maintain psychological stability while processing the implications of technological contact. Her work focused on reframing the invisible period as an opportunity for human growth rather than simply a threat to terrestrial civilization. The hidden passage forces us to confront our own limitations while remaining open to possibilities we cannot yet understand, Santos explained during therapeutic conferences that brought together mental health professionals from around the world. The psychological challenge involves maintaining hope and curiosity despite uncertainty that exceeds anything our species has previously experienced. The economic implications of the invisible period had created unprecedented volatility in global financial markets as investors struggled to price in scenarios that ranged from technological revolution to civilizational collapse. Stock prices fluctuated wildly based on speculation about what 3i Atlas might be accomplishing during its hidden operations and how those activities might affect human economic systems. Technology companies had experienced massive speculation based on potential knowledge transfer opportunities, while traditional industries faced existential questions about their relevance in a post-contact world. The Federal Reserve and European Central Bank had coordinated emergency interventions designed to maintain financial stability, but their monetary policy tools seemed inadequate for managing disruption that might fundamentally alter the basis of human economic activity. The business uncertainty reflected deeper concerns about maintaining social cohesion and individual purpose in a universe that clearly contained intelligence far exceeding human achievements. If 3i Atlas represented access to technology that could solve every material problem driving human economic activity, traditional concepts of work, competition, and resource allocation might become obsolete within years. Amateur radio operators had documented systematic changes in 3i Atlas's electromagnetic emissions throughout the invisible period, suggesting the object was conducting different types of operations during different phases of its hidden passage. The signal evolution implied a planned sequence of activities that built towards some ultimate objective timed to coincide with the object's emergence from behind the sun. Dr. Frank Wilson at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory had coordinated with citizen science networks to maintain continuous monitoring coverage, creating the most comprehensive surveillance effort possible given the constraints imposed by solar interference. The distributed listening network had detected transmission patterns that suggested 3I Atlas was actively communicating with unknown recipients, possibly including deployed probes that had separated from the main body. The electromagnetic activity shows clear signs of systematic communication and coordination occurring throughout the hidden period, Wilson reported during classified briefings that brought together communications specialists and intelligence analysts. We're documenting evidence of organized operations that suggest 3I Atlas is managing multiple concurrent activities while concealed from optical observation. The Mars data has shattered every comfortable assumption we held about our place in the cosmos. What we discovered during those pivotal 72 hours of observation wasn't just another space rock passing through our neighborhood. We documented intelligence that operates according to principles we can barely comprehend, conducting operations that suggest we've been under systematic study by minds that measure time in geological epochs while possessing technology that approaches the theoretical limits of physics itself. The 33 billion-ton mass, the impossible chemical signatures, the precision navigation that defies statistical probability, the real-time structural modifications captured by multiple spacecraft, all of it points to one inescapable conclusion: we are not alone, and we never have been. As 3I Atlas continues its hidden operations behind our sun, accumulating energy and conducting activities we can only imagine, humanity stands at the threshold of either the greatest opportunity or the greatest challenge in our species' history. The next phase begins when this cosmic visitor emerges from solar conjunction in December, potentially transformed and revealing capabilities that will force us to confront realities about intelligence and technology that will reshape everything we thought we knew about the universe and our role within it.